Hi, my name is Bryce Lawson, and this is our presentation on giving and receiving criticism effectively. What is criticism? So, criticism is a form of feedback where someone points out mistakes or areas of improvement. It can either help someone grow or leave them feeling frustrated and discouraged, depending on how it's given. There are two main types of criticism: constructive and destructive. Some common contexts for criticism include in the workplace, in education, and in personal relationships. Constructive criticism. So, constructive criticism is feedback intended to help someone improve. It's specific and actionable, focusing on behavior rather than attacking the person. For example, instead of saying, "That presentation was terrible," a constructive way to give feedback would be, "You did an excellent job on the report. To make it even better next time, you could use more visuals to make your points clearer." This type of criticism encourages growth, strengthens relationships, and leads to better performance. So, some characteristics of constructive criticism include specific, which clearly identifies the issue and suggests a solution; actionable, it provides steps or suggestions that can be implemented; respectful, it's delivered in a positive, non-judgmental tone; focuses on behavior, not personality; it targets actions or skills, not the person; and it's balanced, which highlights both strengths and areas for improvement. Destructive criticism. So, destructive criticism, on the other hand, is harsh and unhelpful. It often attacks the person rather than focusing on what can be improved. For example, saying, "That was a terrible presentation, you'll never get it right," is an example of destructive criticism. This kind of criticism lowers self-esteem, makes people defensive, and damages relationships. It has the opposite effect of constructive criticism, and some characteristics include being vague. It often lacks specific details or suggestions for improvement. It's unkind or harsh. It can feel like an attack rather than an opportunity for growth. It focuses on the person, not the behavior. It makes personal attacks instead of addressing actions or performances. It's demoralizing. It leads to feelings of resentment, shame, or discouragement. And then it's overly negative. It emphasizes the flaws without acknowledging any strengths. Some key differences between constructive and destructive criticism. Constructive criticism is given with a positive, supportive tone, while destructive criticism is harsh and often very critical. Constructive is, it focuses on behavior or skill, not the person, offers specific, actionable suggestions. It aims to encourage growth, improvement, and learning. It builds trust, promotes collaboration, and motivates change. An example is, "Your presentation was strong, but you can improve by focusing on clarity in your slides." And then destructive, harsh, negative, judgmental. It attacks the person, not their behavior. It's often vague, unhelpful, demoralizing, causes defensiveness, discourages. It lowers self-esteem, creates conflict, and damages relationships. An example would be, "That was a horrible presentation, you don't know how to present." And then why constructive criticism matters. Constructive criticism is essential. It encourages personal growth and development. It helps individuals understand their strengths and areas for improvement. It provides actionable feedback to enhance skills and performance. It fosters open communication, which creates a culture of honesty and transparency. It encourages ongoing feedback and dialogue, leading to better relationships. It builds trust, which when delivered respectfully, constructive criticism fosters trust and mutual respect. It helps develop a positive feedback loop where people feel comfortable sharing and receiving input. It promotes a growth mindset, so it encourages individuals to view challenges and mistakes as opportunities to learn. It helps shift focus from failure to improvement. It improves performance and productivity. Focused feedback directly impacts performance, making it easier to pinpoint areas for development. It helps individuals or teams stay focused on their goals and objectives. And then it creates a positive work or learning environment. It encourages collaboration, problem solving, innovation, and it reduces anxiety as people are less afraid of making mistakes when they know constructive feedback will be given. Thank you.
In these few slides, I'll talk about why using I statement in specific language is important. So how do you use I statement in specific language, and how is it important? You can use I statement in specific language by focus on your experience, not blaming, avoiding vague or emotional languages, and encouraging open and respectful conversations. So why do we need this kind of language? Well, when we give feedback, the way we say things matter a lot. Using I statements help us talk about problems without sounding like we're attacking someone. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen," you can say, "I feel ignored when I'm interrupted during meetings." That sounds more respectful, and the other person is more likely to listen and understand your point. It also helps to be specific. Saying, "You're not doing your job," is too general. The other person might not know what you're really upset about. But if you say, "You didn't turn in your part of the project on time," now they know exactly what the issue is. That makes the conversation more helpful, and it's easier to fix. Now let's move on to this slide. How to structure your message. We can use words like "I feel," "when," "because," or "I would like" to start the conversation. Be specific and avoid absolutes like "always" or "never." This structure is simple but really powerful. You start with how you feel, then what happened, and then explain why it matters. You can even add a solution to help improve things. For example, "I feel stressed when deadlines are missed because it delays the team. I would like us to talk earlier if there is a problem." That's clear, calm, and respectful. And it also gives the other person something to work with. One more thing. Try to stay away from words like "always" or "never." Say something like, "You always ignore me," sounds dramatic and can make the other person defensive. It's better to describe exactly what happened. Like, "I felt left out when I wasn't invited to the meeting." That is a lot easier to respond and to fix. Benefits in the workplace. Now for this slide, let's look at what this type of communication actually does in the workplace. It builds trust and clarity, reduces conflict and confusion, and improves teamwork and accountability. It encourages a feedback-friendly environment. Using I statements and clear language make things smoother when you're working with a team. People feel like they can speak up without being judged, and feedback becomes something normal, not scary. Let's say someone in your team keeps turning things in late. If you say "you're lazy," it just causes drama. But if you say "I feel frustrated when parts are late because it slowed down our group progress," that's much better. It shows how you feel, why it matters, and gives them a chance to do better. In the end, this kind of communication builds trust, improves teamwork, and creates a positive environment where problems get solved much faster.
Hello, my name is Dean Kogas. I'm going to be discussing active listening and practicing open-mindedness. So in the context of giving and receiving criticism, active listening is one of the most powerful tools you can use. It's a skill that requires focus and intentionality. Most of us listen with the intention of responding, but active listening means truly hearing the other person's message before formulating your own thoughts. This is particularly important in situations where criticism is being delivered. As easy as it can be to jump into defense mode, instead of mentally preparing for your rebuttal, Active listening encourages you to stay present in the moment and fully understand the speaker's perspective. Key behaviors of active listening include maintaining eye contact, using open body language, and offering nonverbal cues such as nodding to show engagement. Additionally, it involves paraphrasing what the speaker has said to confirm your understanding. For example, you might say, "So what I'm hearing is you believe my recent report, ... This approach ensures that there's no misunderstandings and signals to the speaker that you value their input. By practicing active listening, you not only show respect but also open the door to a more meaningful, less defensive conversation. When criticism is met with active listening, people feel validated, and they are much more likely to remain calm, engaged, and making it easier to process the feedback. This can dramatically reduce the chances of defensive or a hostile reaction. Ultimately, active listening is essential for creating an environment where feedback can be given and received constructively. Now that we've discussed active listening, let's dive into open-mindedness, another key component of receiving criticism effectively. Open-mindedness means maintaining an open and receptive mindset, especially when receiving feedback. Often when we hear criticism, our first instinct is to get defensive or emotional. We might feel personally attacked or think that the person offering feedback doesn't understand our intentions. Open-mindedness challenges these automatic reactions by encouraging us to suspend judgment and take a step back before responding. One way to practice open-mindedness is to suspend judgment, meaning don't make immediate conclusions about the criticism or the person delivering it. Instead of thinking, "This isn't fair," try thinking, "What can I learn from this?" Often, criticism provides a unique perspective that we may not have considered on our own. Recognizing and acknowledging your personal biases, whether emotional or cognitive, can help you stay open to this new information. For example, if you've had a rough day, you might interpret feedback more negatively than intended, but taking a moment to recognize that your mood is influencing your perception can help you respond more rationally. Another key to open-mindedness is understanding that criticism is not a personal attack, but an opportunity for improvement. Feedback is about performance, not your character. By viewing criticism as an opportunity for growth, you'll find it easier to accept and act on. This mindset shift is incredibly powerful in the workplace, where open-mindedness can lead to continuous learning and development. Ultimately, being open-minded means staying flexible and willing to adapt your approach, behavior, or understanding based on the feedback you receive. Now that we've explored active listening and open-mindedness, let's talk about how to apply these skills in a professional setting. Team success is rooted in mutual respect and collaboration. In any organization, open and honest feedback plays a critical role in helping teams perform at their best. Active listening and open-mindedness are both essential for fostering an environment where feedback is not feared but welcomed. When both parties are actively listening and maintaining an open mind, the exchange becomes more productive and positive. In practice, a great way to demonstrate active listening is by using reflective responses such as, "I hear you saying blank," or "What I understand from your feedback is blank." This not only shows you are engaged, but also gives the other person a chance to clarify anything that may have been misinterpreted. Reflective responses are simple yet an effective way to create a collaborative, respectful environment where feedback is clearly communicated and understood. Furthermore, it's essential to encourage a culture of constructive criticism and psychological safety. This means creating a work environment where team members feel safe to give feedback, receive criticism without fear of judgment or retribution. When feedback becomes normalized as a part of professional development, it helps reduce any anxiety associated with criticism and promotes ongoing improvement. Regular feedback loops where employees are both giving and receiving feedback on a consistent basis are also vital for continuous growth. By applying active listening and open-mindedness in the workplace, teams can create a culture where feedback is embraced as a tool for personal and professional career development rather than something to fear or avoid.
Hello, my name is Blanton Minga, and I'm one of the group members for this project. My portion is the time and setting for giving or receiving criticism. When it comes to time and setting for feedback, you want to ensure that you have a few key points down and secure before giving or receiving the feedback. These points are essential to keep the workplace a drama-free environment that is efficient and effective. Keep all of these in mind when preparing to give or receive criticism of any type. So to start off with giving feedback, when it comes to giving criticism, you're going to want to schedule this conversation in a private location that is free from distractions and others. Since feedback is usually going to be private information, you don't want other employees hearing this and creating a situation where others know what you said about this person. Someone could potentially hold that criticism above their head and use it as a type of bullying. This is important to keep in mind whenever you give any sort of criticism, because if you just tell somebody, like a coworker, like, hey man, you probably should really work on that, the person next to them might say, oh wow, this person's really not doing well on this, and then that just doesn't look good for them. It could potentially damage their image or yours, because they know, hey, this person doesn't talk about it in a private manner, I'm probably not going to talk to them. So this is very important to keep in mind. The next point here that I really want to focus on in stress is keeping it face-to-face in a stress-free environment. So whenever you go to actually give them the news or give them their feedback, you want to go to some kind of private location that's really not going to be like a public space with lots of people. You want to find, say, like a private office space or a private location in the office or anywhere that you can sit down face-to-face, same level. You don't want to be standing above them or have them sitting, or vice versa, where someone is taller than the other, because it just doesn't create a comfortable environment. It may make them feel pressured, like some kind of interrogation or something like that. If they feel uncomfortable, then they might not hear everything you're saying, which is obviously the whole point of why you're talking to them. So you want to really make sure that, you know, they're focusing on you and that your whole message is getting across. It just makes the room clearer to have that same level of speaking. I'd also like to put an emphasis on a stress-free environment, like closed-door office space or outside, which I said before, but really want to harp on that. Like, if you can find a private office space or somewhere that's not as busy, it's definitely best and key, because they'll actually hear everything you're saying and it will be a much clearer point getting across. So to start off, this next slide is for receiving criticism and some points to remember. First off, you do not want to give a quick response back to criticism in the moment. You want to give yourself time to process it first before you give a response if one is warranted. You really want to consider this, especially because the person that is telling you this information is probably trying to help you and trying to benefit you and give you some growth that you probably might need if they're telling you it in the first place. So you really want to think about what you say and how you say it. So for example, let's say your boss calls you over after you go through a presentation and they say, hey, you need to work on your presentation skills because your body language is bad. If you respond back with, no, I don't think so, like, I mean, I think it's fine, or something along the lines of that, it's not going to look good on you, and it's going to reflect poorly on your professionalism and your personal image. And that's not something that you want to mess with. So you really want to make sure you have a respectful response after you think about it, you know, potentially ask a follow-up question, but really try to keep a growth mindset in this setting, because they're just trying to help you. Another thing to really focus on is keeping a growth mindset. You do not want to take it negatively. You don't want to take it like they're personally shaming you or they're personally ragging on you. You don't want to say that. You don't want to think about it like that. You want to think about it like they're trying to help me. Whenever you are receiving this criticism, you want to make sure that you're giving a respectful body language and respectful posture, and like you're not rolling your eyes, you're not sitting there, you know, not facing them or back turn or something weird, like you're moving around and just not being respectful and attentive, because in the end they are trying to help you, and you really want to make sure that you're hearing what they have to say, because it will benefit you.
Managing emotions during criticism is a crucial skill, especially in professional environments. Even when feedback is well-intentioned and constructive, it can still trigger strong emotions. What we do in those moments really determines whether that feedback helps us grow or just creates more conflict. So let's look at why emotions are involved in criticism, what triggers them, and how we can handle those reactions more effectively. When someone gives us critical feedback, especially if it's unexpected, it can activate a stress response, sometimes even similar to how our brains can react to danger. That's why we might feel defensive, embarrassed, or even angry when facing criticism. These emotions can create a barrier to truly hearing the message someone says. We might focus more on how something was said instead of what was said. Or worse, we might shut down entirely and miss out on useful insight. Over time, repeated emotional blowups or avoidance can also damage relationships with your teammates, managers, or even your clients, and that can negatively affect both morale and productivity in the workplace. Certain things tend to trigger emotional responses during criticism, and being aware of them makes it easier to control our reactions. First, if we feel like the criticism is attacking us personally instead of focusing on our task or behaviors, we're likely to become way more defensive. Even if the intent wasn't personal, it can still feel that way. So the tone of voice matters a lot too. If the feedback is sounding condescending or angry, it automatically makes us more reactive. Timing is another big one. Being criticized in front of others, like during a meeting, can feel humiliating and cause a stronger emotional reaction. And finally, if we already feel unappreciated or misunderstood in a role, even small pieces of feedback can feel much bigger than they are. So, what can we actually do in the moment? The first step is to pause. Just take a breath. Even a few seconds can stop us from reacting emotionally. It gives our brain time to shift from fight or flight into a more rational state. Next is listening actively. Try to focus on the actual message being said rather than the tone or delivery of the person saying it. This helps us get the useful part of the feedback, even if the delivery wasn't perfect. Asking clarifying questions also helps. Instead of assuming someone's being unfair, ask what they meant. It shows maturity and keeps the conversation constructive. We can also use positive self-talk, reminding ourselves, this isn't about me as a person, this is about a behavior I can work on. It's a shift from defensiveness to growth. And sometimes, if emotions are really high, it's okay to say, thanks for the feedback. Can I take a bit of time to process and follow up later? That buys you time to cool down and respond thoughtfully. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, plays a huge role in how we handle criticism. People with a high EQ are better at recognizing their own emotions as they happen. That's called self-awareness. They can also regulate those emotions in a way that's productive rather than reactive. On top of that, emotional intelligence includes empathy, the ability to understand where the other person is coming from. If we assume the person giving feedback wants us to succeed, not to tear us down, it completely shifts how we receive it. Leaders with high emotional intelligence create healthier environments where feedback is normalized and safe. Teams in these environments tend to be more open, more collaborative, and more successful overall. To make this a little more real, let's walk through a quick scenario that could happen. So let's say your supervisor says, hey, your presentation yesterday was a little hard to follow. That might feel like a jab towards you, especially if you worked really hard on it. If you react emotionally, you might interrupt, get defensive, or even mentally check out of the conversation completely. That does damage the relationship you have with that person, and you miss the chance to improve your work. But if you manage your reaction, take a deep breath, listen, and ask, can you help me understand what wasn't clear? Then you can get the real insight that makes your next presentation much stronger. You might even say something like, thanks for pointing that out. I'd like to improve. That changes the whole tone and shows that you're coachable. Finally, emotions are completely natural when receiving criticism. But with practice, we can learn to manage those emotions and respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. By staying calm, asking questions, and focusing on growth, we turn criticism into something useful instead of something negative. And the more we work on managing those emotions in these moments, the better we get. Not at just taking feedback, but at growing professionally, communicating clearly, and leading with emotional intelligence.
Having covered what constructive criticism is, how to structure the message, keeping an open mind when receiving it, practicing open mindfulness so that you can manage your emotions, and the time and place for feedback, I am now going to walk you through how we can take feedback and actually do something with it, implementing it, turning it into something real for real improvements, and why following up matters just as much as receiving it. Giving effective criticism and receiving it effectively is just the first step when completing the feedback loop. During implementation, you must take notes, and this is true for both sides, so that both parties can see that there is active listening at play, and there is room for growth at the company, or wherever you're getting feedback from. Next is to clarify. Make sure both parties have an understanding of what's in need of improvement, always asking questions. Moving on to the next step. What is great about constructive criticism is it gives everybody the chance to work together and actively create steps towards project progress. Actively implementing the change, and that's where you reflect back to the action steps, which is crucial so that it's not just all talk. And for personal monitoring, you can set up, for example, SMART goals to get this done. And of course, like I said, tracking the progress. and setting up another meeting to check back in, which is getting us prepared for the follow-up step. Now, on to the final step of the feedback loop here, and that's the importance of following up, which I feel is the most crucial part of the whole giving and receiving effective criticism, because it really closes it out. It shows that you took accountability, that you have respect for the organization, the manager has respect for you, that they want to show that they want to see growth in you, which is building those relationships, building that trust, and then having great communication in an organization so that it can thrive and flourish. Motivational speaker Zig Ziglar once noted, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And having that empathy and being able to actively listen on both sides is so important. Now I want to talk about some examples of real world scenarios. And in this case, we're going to talk about the workplace, which is one of the most analyzed areas of constructive criticism. So to talk about this scenario is an employee receives constructive criticism on time management. And this could be something like, while you do great work for the company, I feel you can improve on your time management skills. Let's brainstorm some ideas on how to help you effectively get your work done on time. And through this, you're going to do the active listening, create action steps, track and manage the progress of this constructive criticism. And from this, they were able to implement using calendar blocking and make sure that this was effective for the employee. And they set up a 2-week meeting to share the progress to see how it was going. And this would then close the feedback loop. Now I want to take a look at constructive criticism from a customer. I know we talk a lot about the workplace constructive criticism, but feedback can come from any angle and from anywhere. This could be, like we talked about, work, school, sports, even at home. And here, this scenario really shows how it can come from any angle. So here, a cafe receives constructive criticism that mobile orders are too slow. And the constructive criticism can be, I really love your coffee, but I feel that I am waiting longer than usual for a cup. Is there any way that we can reduce wait times? And when a manager would see this on their post, go back, look through the ordering app, update it, look at when wait times are higher than normal, maybe add more baristas in there, actually implement the change that is needed, and then follow up and post on socials and ask for feedback again on how it's doing and if they see any progress themselves. To conclude this presentation on giving and receiving criticism effectively, I want to go over what we have learned today, which is what constructive criticism is, how to structure the message, the role of active listening and open mindfulness, the time and setting for feedback, how to manage your emotions, how to actively implement it, and the most crucial step, which is following up. And I want to leave us here with this quote by Abraham Lincoln, which says, "He has the right to criticize who has the heart to help." And I feel this is a powerful message because you have to be willing to accept criticism so you can develop and grow in all aspects of your life. Thank you for listening and watching this presentation.